Hello, everyone. God bless you and peace be with you. We're going to start with a quick little meditation. Okay, you can start seated in a chair or cross legged on the floor, it doesn't really matter. You can even do this lying down if you really want. I'm going to start with a couple of deep breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. Feel the air travel up your nostrils all the way to the back of your nostrils and then out of your nostrils. Pay attention to how it feels. When we're breathing whilst being truly relaxed, we will breathe from our belly. So the belly rises and falls as we breathe. Feel your feet resting against the floor. Pay attention to how it feels to have your back resting against the chair. Feel your hands on your thighs. Feel the weight of them. Pay attention to how it feels to have your body resting in space. Continue noticing the breath. If a thought arises, pay attention to it. If it's a mental image or some kind of a scene playing out in your mind, watch what happens when you pay attention to it. Mind disappears into the ether, literally evaporates like a cloud of smoke or like dissolving something. Continue noticing the breath. Pay attention to any other bodily sensations. Any itches, tickling, tingling. Just gently notice it. Pay attention to how it feels. Try and resist the urge to scratch it or to move in any way. Stare into the darkness behind your closed eyelids. You might notice it is not completely dark. It is, depending on the lighting in your external environment, somewhat illuminated. Pay attention to how it looks. Patiently stare into space. It's boundaryless, shapeless, somewhat illuminated darkness that I'm staring into. Continue noticing the breath. Notice the sound of my voice. Notice how it appears and then disappears almost immediately. Notice how sounds don't really linger. They just appear, disappear, and you don't know which one's going to appear next. It could be my voice, could be the wind outside, could be something else. We don't control conscious experience. Things just appear and disappear in this wide open space. This is consciousness. It is one, it is undivided, and everything that we notice is just a modification of it. Okay, well, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. It's amazing how quickly time goes when you're meditating. It just shoots by. So I'm really glad to have you guys with me on this YouTube channel and on this amazing journey that we're all on together. Um, I feel like this channel is just going to be a really amazing place where I can share what has helped me, help others, and we can all go on this journey together to become better men, better women, better people in general. So I just want to go over a couple of things that have helped me on my journey. So the first is meditation, And so, yeah, I hope you were able to join in with me for that quick little guided meditation just then. It was only 4 minutes. And yeah, look, meditation's amazing. There are studies from Harvard University indicating that it can actually rewire your brain. So 30 minutes of meditation for 8 weeks was actually enough to like positively change someone's brain, shrink the section that regulates anxiety, and expand the sections that control, memory, cognition, and attention, and all that sort of stuff. So, look, it really is amazing. I can't recommend it enough. I actually never thought I'd be meditating. Like, it was, I stepped out of my comfort zone to try meditation. I really did. And I'm so glad I did it. It's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. So please, just even if you can just do 5 minutes a day, I'm going to continue doing regular meditations on here. We can do some live stream meditations, particularly if there's enough demand for it. But I'm going to be doing that anyway. And, I really want this to be something that I can share with all of you guys. And we can all work together to help each other and to grow together. I'm far from being a master in meditation, but as Seneca said, when we teach, we learn. So I can teach you guys what I know, and that'll help me consolidate that knowledge and expand upon it as I continue moving forward in my journey and helping you guys move forward in yours. And you can share what you learn with people in your lives. And it's like a positive, avalanche effect in all of our lives, and by extension in the wider community, and in the world itself. We can all work together to create positive change by just being better people, being better versions of ourselves. We don't have to move mountains to do this. It can start with 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day of just paying attention to the contents of consciousness as we were just then. It really can be that simple. As I was saying in some of my earlier videos, I am Christian, Catholic specifically. So there's my Bible. Catholicism and, Christianity in general has been a huge influence on me. I did stray from the faith for a while when I was in my sort of late teens, early 20s, went through a bit of a period where I considered myself an atheist. I have always been religious ever since I was a young child. I've been quite religious. Jesus Christ he's imprinted on my DNA, on my soul, and, I'll always serve him. And to me, Jesus Christ is the personification of love, the Prince of Peace. And, you can turn your back on Jesus. He will never turn his back on you. That's the truth. And you might see here my tattoo. That's Jesus on the cross, soldier of Christ. I mean, I've never fired a gun in my life, but, I've fought with my fists plenty of times. But the phrase soldier of Christ, it's more about, me knowing the values of Jesus Christ and being ready to stand and fight for them. Like I say, stand up for people, don't stand over them. That's what I believe in. And so that's why I have that tattoo. And, other things that have been a huge influence on me, Stoicism, began with this book, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Big shout out to Ryan Holiday, the Daily Stoic guy. He actually introduced me to the works of the Stoics. I was vaguely aware of them. Like, I've always been a history buff and, kind of was vaguely aware of the Stoics and their work, and would have heard of Marcus Aurelius before, particularly in the context of his role as the Emperor of Rome. But it was Ryan Holiday on Instagram that introduced me to the Stoics, at this sort of stage of my life when I was about, I think, 28 or something, 27, 28. And at first it only just briefly got my attention. Like, I saw a few quotes. Like, I remember one I saw from Seneca: all cruelty springs from weakness. That was Seneca who said that. I thought, that is so true. Like, that is so true. And it made so much sense in the context of my life, because all the cruelest people I knew were so weak. They were such weak people. And some of the strongest people I've known, some of the toughest people I've known, were actually really kind deep down and didn't like hurting others for their own enjoyment. So that quote really resonated with me. And it took a while before I actually started studying Stoicism in depth, but this is the first Stoic book I bought, Meditations. An amazing book. Marcus Aurelius' personal diary while he was Emperor of Rome. He never intended for it to be published. It just is full of just wisdom on page by page by page. And it's just a beautiful book. The next Stoic philosopher I was introduced to was Seneca. Read Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. Don't have a copy on me. I actually got it from the library. um, Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. Seneca's amazing. My favorite is Epictetus, because Epictetus was a slave. He was born into no privilege at all. He is someone who suffered a lot. You know, his master broke his leg. He was crippled for the rest of his life, but he never gave up on himself. He never spent time complaining, blaming anyone, or feeling sorry for himself. He just got on with it. And over 2,000 years later, we're still talking about him. And in fact, he was a huge influence on this bloke, Marcus Aurelius. Another great book, Lives of the Stoics, by Ryan Holiday, sort of goes over the lives of many of these Stoics, and it's actually a really big eye opener, because you realize how many of the Stoics actually ended up like killing themselves, and dying in really horrible circumstances. Many of them killed themselves to avoid compromising their principles, so they really did walk the walk in that context. Seneca in particular, died by suicide, because he didn't want to compromise his dignity or his honor. So, this is another great book, Lives of the Stoics. This one, Buddha is as Buddha does. This is about the 10 original practices for enlightened living, written by Lama Surya Das. He also wrote Awakening the Buddha Within. Buddhism is something that has only come to my attention a bit more recently. Like, I've always sort of known what it was, like it was religion, and the Buddha started it and everything, but I only became a bit more interested in Buddhism in the last year or so. Obviously, I started meditating, which is in many ways a practice popularized by Buddhism. Certainly in the Western cultural zeitgeist, it has been spread by Buddhism, but you don't have to be a Buddhist to meditate. You're not worshipping any other god when you meditate. You're just sitting there and observing the contents of consciousness. Christ would have meditated when he was in the desert for 40 days. I'm sure he would have prayed in the manner that Jews of his day prayed in, but I'm sure he also spent a lot of time just sitting there, resting with his thoughts, with the Holy Spirit, with the devil who was trying to tempt him, and whatever else arose. And he would have just been paying mindful attention to all that, keeping in mind his duty, and what he had to do. So meditation is definitely a practice that Christians can benefit from. And, personally, it brought me so much closer to Christ. Meditation brought me so much closer to Jesus Christ. It's not funny. As I was doing it, as I was getting more into it, it started making me feel more spiritual and bringing out that spiritual side of me. And for me, that is Jesus Christ. That's where my heart lies. That's where my soul lies, is with Jesus Christ. And so when I started feeling more spiritual, I immediately reverted back to my Christian faith, and realized how much of a strong part of me it is. Despite all the straying I have done over the years, physically, mentally, I've made terrible mistakes in my life, but Jesus has always been there with me. And like I said, you can turn your back on him. He's never going to turn his back on you. And that's the truth. Just thought I'd share that. Just thought I'd share a few things that have really helped me a lot. Like I said, I want this channel to be a place where we can all lift each other up and help each other. Like I said, I want you to build paradise within yourself. That comes from a quote from Paradise Lost, where when Adam and Eve are being kicked out of paradise, the Archangel Michael tells them that they can build a paradise within thee, happier far, which in modern English means you can build a paradise within yourself, which is going to be far happier than the one you were just kicked out of, because the one they were born into, they were created into, the Garden of Eden, well, they were created in it, so they didn't know anything else. So all they knew was the abundance and joy of living in Eden. But now, when they were kicked out of Eden, and as God said, to Adam, you will eat bread. By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread until you return to the dust, because you are dust. I created you from the dust. What Archangel Michael is saying to them is that you can have the chance, through hard work, through faith, through devotion to duty, you can build a paradise within yourself, which in the end will be far happier than the one you're born into, because now you will have known suffering and pain and misery. And so when you finally do build that paradise within yourself, it's going to be far happier than the Garden of Eden, because like I said, you will have known suffering and misery. So it will truly be a paradise, by comparison, especially. So yeah, anyway, just thought I'd share that. And look, God bless you. Peace be with you all. And I'm really looking forward to taking you all on this journey with me. Thank you.